Hello everyone, welcome to the EPG Pathshala. I am Rajeshwari Moganty, Professor from the Department of Biochemistry, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. Now today's module is on viscosity and its applications. Now this comes under the paper on biophysical techniques based on hydrodynamic properties, and in the first module I have explained to you what are the different type of hydrodynamic properties and what is the need for us to understand these techniques separately under the head of hydrodynamic properties. So viscosity is a first one, like one of the very first and easy methods of studying the under the hydrodynamic properties, techniques under hydrodynamic properties, which can be used to study the molecular structure. Now the objectives of this course, of this module, are laid out like this. That is, before I would like to introduce you to the property of viscosity. Although you must have studied in your college at earlier stages, but as I repeatedly tell that people come with different backgrounds and they forget the basics, foundations. So I would like to, initial part is based on the introduction, then of course the relationship between viscosity and temperature, how does they change? It is not an independent property. Also I would like to explain you that how to measure the viscosity, what are the different types of techniques, viscometry methods. Now based on after measuring the viscosity, why are you measuring this? Because you need to understand the different kind of applications. So the application of viscometry, the method is called viscometry and the instrument is called viscometer. Now the application of the viscometry to measure the composition in a mixture, that is one of the simple methods to where you apply. Then of course the rest of them is to understand the biopolymers like DNA, protein, and also the molecular weight determination. Structural characterization can be studied, whether the structure is in a native form or a denatured form. And then of course finally what is the role of viscosity, how can it help in clinical background or a clinical setup? Is there any use? Because we are into the medical biophysics, which can be applied to the medical area, clinical area. So finally I will discuss how this viscosity help in understanding or gives the basis of several pathological conditions. So with these objectives you will come to know, you will get a feel of the technique and then its applications, as well as how can it help in a clinical setting. So these are the objectives. See, the viscosity is actually a measure of the internal friction of a fluid. Now this friction becomes apparent or clear when a layer of the fluid is made move in relation to another layer. I will just show you in one of the next slides the diagram. So what happens, the greater the friction, what is happening is greater the amount of force required to cause this movement, and therefore this is what is called the shear, S-H-E-A-R. So the shear and the viscosity are actually interrelated. Now the shearing occurs whenever the fluid is physically moved or disturbed, and therefore as in for example when you are pouring something or spreading or making a layer or a mixing, this kind of thing, this shear force comes into play. Now highly viscous fluids, if you take for example honey or a glycerine, these kind of liquids if you take, they require more force and therefore they move less viscous material. They are called less viscous material because they take more time to move. So they are highly viscous fluids. Okay. So what I explained to you is that actually viscosity is a quantitative measure of the fluid's resistance to flow. That is what we have discussed about different examples. And therefore when you define, it can be called as the internal friction of any fluid. Now there is also earlier it used to call the rheology, the study to change the form in its form to flow the matter, that is for example embracing the electricity or viscosity or any plasticity. This is a general term that is used in rheology. Now when you come to viscosity, what are the units of viscosity? Viscosity is expressed in terms of poise. 1 poise is actually equal to 100 centipoise. So we usually express it as CPS, and that is a unit. 100 centipoise is equal to 1 poise. Now this figure you can see clearly that if there are two layers, and then this is how the Newton expressed, Isaac Newton defined the viscosity by considering the model that I have shown you in the slide, that if there are two layers and two parallel planes, you can imagine the two planes as two different layers of the fluid, and the two parallel planes of the fluid which are of equal area. That is why there are two, I have shown one above and below with area is A, same area, but they are separated by a small distance dx. So, and therefore, by moving in the same direction, if you try to move both the planes in one direction at a difference of the velocity, that is v1 and v2, differences in velocity will be dv. Therefore, whatever I showed you earlier on the diagram, the Newton assumed that the force required to maintain this difference in speed, that is the difference between the v1 and v2 dv, was proportional to the difference in speed through the liquid or the velocity gradient. Therefore, to express this, Newton wrote F by A equal to eta into dv by dx, where eta is the viscosity, dv is the difference in the velocity gradient, and then dx is the distance between the two layers. Eta is a constant, and therefore, it is different for a given material and is called the viscosity. Now, this is a quantitative measure of the fluid's resistance to flow. The velocity gradient dv by dx is a measure of the change in speed at which the intermediate layers move with respect to each other. Therefore, it describes sharing the liquid experiences, that is the experience, and thus it is called shear rate. The term F by A indicates the force per unit area required to produce the shearing action, and therefore, it is referred to as shear stress. So, if you compare the viscosity, actually you can define as eta the viscosity, tau by gamma, that is shear stress by shear rate. Intrinsic viscosity of solutions. So far what we have studied is the viscosity of a pure liquid, but viscosity can be measured for solutions, that is a solute dissolved in a solvent, that is a solution. Now, what is intrinsic viscosity? Intrinsic viscosity is a measure of the solute's contribution to the viscosity of the solution, and therefore, the intrinsic viscosity is defined as eta, that is limiting theta as reaches 0, that is limit eta minus eta 0 by eta 0 into theta. Now, eta 0 is the viscosity in absence of the solute, that means it is a pure solvent, and theta is the volume fraction of the solute in the solution. And therefore, this intrinsic viscosity, which we express it in the brackets, intrinsic viscosity eta is a dimensionless number, because you are actually, if you see the equation eta by eta, that therefore, there is no unit for the units for the intrinsic viscosity. The determination of the viscosity of the liquids, it is a very simple technique using the Ostwald viscometer, which is also called the capillary type of viscometer. On your right, you see the viscometer. This is a U-shaped glass apparatus which has two arms, one is a wide arm and the other one is a narrow one with a capillary tube connecting both of them. Now, there are two marks, if you see, on the above and below the bulb in the narrow part. What you do is to, in this method of viscosity, what you actually do is fill a liquid which is having a eta of 1, that is viscosity of the liquid is eta 1, and that can be determined in relation to another liquid which has another viscosity, that is eta 2. So, you have comparison you are actually doing. For example, you can do water and another solution, aqueous solution. So, now the viscosity of the liquid under test eta 1 can be measured by measuring the time t1 that required for the liquid to pass. Note that there are two bulbs, and I have also shown you the two marks A and B. Therefore, by measuring the time required, in case of the eta 1 we are calling the liquid 1, and therefore, the time taken is t1. Now, how do you measure this? That liquid has to pass through between the two marks, as because once it starts flowing by the gravity through the vertical capillary tube. So, you measure the time t1. Now, similarly, what you do, because it is viscosity is hydrodynamic property, it goes through the capillary tube and you note down what is the time, that is t1. Now, the next time is the time, compare it with another liquid t2, which is having a viscosity of eta 2. Therefore, usually we take the second liquid as the eta 2 as a solvent, that is water, if it is in aqueous solution. Therefore, eta 1 by eta 2 can be written as rho 1 into T1 by rho 2 into T2. Rho 1 is rho 1 and 2 rho 2 are the densities of the two liquids, and then if they have the two liquids of the same or close densities, for example, if you take an aqueous solution which has a dilute solution, then we assume that both solutions have similar density, and therefore, eta 1 eta 2 become can be cancelled, and therefore, the comparison of eta by measuring T1 and T2, you can actually compare the eta 1 by eta 2. Therefore, eta 1 by eta 2 equal to T1 by T2. So, that is an experimental method. Determination of an unknown composition. This is one of the simple methods. With the help of the Ostwald viscometer, you can estimate the unknown composition of a mixture. For example, I have shown you on the graph that if you take the composition of the given mixture in percentage, plot on the x axis 0 to 100, and also take the time, just measure the time flow, and that you plot on the y axis. And if you plot draw a line between the different solutions having different compositions of the mixture, then you determine the viscosities, and then you determine a what do you call the standard curve, and then from that you, for an unknown liquid, if you determine the flow of time, you can actually calculate the composition. It is a very simple experiment, nevertheless it is very useful and important to calculate method of calculating the unknown composition of the liquid. Therefore, from this graph you can determine the composition of the unknown mixture by corresponding to the viscosity that can be determined. Now, the next one is that if you pour that if you take the water, how do you do that? If you take the water in into the arm which is as a wider arm, 2 arms, and then try to suck the liquid from the upper arm, and then let it stay up to the mark, and then close the tip, and then determine that how much time it takes. So, I am showing you, and this record the time, that how much time it takes from upper to come to, because once the levels equal in both the arms, it comes to a kind of what do you call the plateau region, and the time the liquid does not flow any further, and that time example I have shown you here is about 10 seconds. So, this you can repeat with different times, and then repeat the previous experiment also with different liquids, and then you can plot it, draw a table and then determine it. So, it is also one of the easy methods. Temperature dependency of viscosity. So, viscosity is actually dependent on temperature. As the temperature increases, the viscosity actually decreases, and therefore, according to this equation, K equal to A into e power minus E n by RT, where A is Arrhenius constant, R is the gas constant, and eta n is the activation energy of flow. Now, T is a temperature, whatever temperature. Therefore, if T changes, obviously the eta also changes. The temperature of the liquid is using an absolute scale. You have to express it in minus 270 degree Kelvin, and therefore, once you draw the plot, determine the viscosity as a function of temperature and plot it. Then plot eta versus 1 by T, because eta and T are inversely proportional. Therefore, you get a linear plot, and that slope will give you eta E by R, that is a fluid viscosity, which exhibits Arrhenius like behavior. Okay. Now, slide 14. What are the applications of viscometry? Viscometry, one application I have already explained, that is the mixture composition of the unknown mixture, then calculation of the concentration, determination of average molecular weight of the polymer, and biopolymer. It could be a synthetic polymer which is very commonly used in industry, and of course, here I will give you examples of biopolymers, that is DNA and protein. Why do polymers actually make solutions so viscous? Now, polymers, when you dissolve them in water, for example, if it is a aqueous, if it is soluble in water, polymers actually move very slowly, and at least they move a lot more slowly than small molecules, because size is a big thing. Size, polymer has a big molecular weight, and therefore, it is very common sense that they move faster and in a liquid, and then the liquid moves actually alone, liquids, the liquid alone or the solvent alone moves faster. So, when we dissolve a polymer in a solvent, their slow motion makes the whole solution more viscous, because it itself is moving fast slow, that makes the liquid itself also to move slow. The slow moving polymers get in a way of the fast moving solvent molecules when they try to flow. So, the whole solution together moves more slowly than compared to the solvent itself, and therefore, it becomes more viscous. That is why the polymer solutions are more viscous as compared to the solvent. The big motor, for example, having moved slowly, it is like one of the examples we normally give in the enzyme kinetics also, that the bottleneck principle, whether it is a traffic or it is an enzymes, slow step is a rate determining step. Similarly, here also the polymer decides the movement or the viscosity as compared to the solvent alone. The polymer molecules, more than just slowing by non-interacting. Okay. So far we expressed that the molecules are non-interact, but there is an additional problem or the point that comes into play, that they are just not passively there in the solution, but they also interact with the solvent, that is water, by having additional intermolecular forces. So, that further adds to the movement or the viscosity. So, that further adds to the viscosity, that means it makes it further further to move slowly, and therefore, the attractive forces or the secondary interactions between the polymer and solvent molecules, that is the small solvent molecules, can become bind to the polymer. So, what happens when this happens, they move with the polymer more or less, and of course, they also have to move at the polymer's speed of this, making it also further slow. What does all this have to do with measuring the molecular weight? Okay, the polymer is decreasing the flow of the solvent, but then how does it help us? How can we exploit this property of the viscosity to determine the molecular weight of the polymer? That is our objective. So, if the higher the molecular weight, the more viscous the polymer solution will be, and polymers have got really high molecular weight, and therefore, the higher the hydrodynamic volume, that is a volume that is when a protein or a DNA is actually coiled up, it occupies a spherical shape, and therefore, the movement is much more smooth as compared to a denatured protein or a denatured DNA. So, the size and shape are the two different things which also add properties to the molecular to the viscosity. So, the higher the molecular weight, the more strongly the solvent molecules will be bound to the polymer, and therefore, this increases the speed, increases the slowing of the matlab, it actually further slows down the solvent molecules in movement, in their movement. Therefore, for every polymer there is a definite relationship between the molecular weight and viscosity. So, this is actually dependent on the size and as well as the shape of the polymer. So, measuring of the viscosity we can determine the molecular weight. So, here what I am showing you is measuring the viscosity like the way we did it earlier for determining the by T1 and T2 and then eta 1 by eta 2. Here what I am showing you is an example where by measuring the viscosity of a polymer solution. So, similarly, you fill the bulb with the, as shown earlier, you fill the bulb with the polymer solution and let it flow and determine the time, and therefore, calculate the relative viscosity of the polymer solutions to the viscosity of the pure solvent with and without the polymer. So, efflux time of the solution T and efflux time of the solvent T0. So, T by T0 becomes relative viscosity with respect to the solvent. Therefore, we do not put eta 1 by eta 2 or eta by eta 0, but we call it as eta r, that is the relative viscosity. So, this is an important property because you are most of the time dealing with the water. So, water has become as a comparative or the relative liquid. Calculate this, giving an example that if you can calculate the specific viscosity of the solution using this equation. Now, you term the viscosity of the pure solvent, then you came across the term called the relative viscosity. Now, there are two more terms, that is the specific viscosity and reduced viscosity. Now, the specific viscosity is actually the efflux time of the solution minus efflux time of the solvent by the efflux time of the solvent. That means you are actually with reference to the solvent, you are subtracting the time that is taken by the solution minus the T minus T0 by with respect to T0. So, this becomes the specific viscosity or the eta specific. You write it as a SP as the subscript with eta. So, T minus T0 by T0 equal to eta specificity. Now, the third one is a reduced viscosity. Now, this is again relative and specific viscosity. How is it related? Specific viscosity by concentration. If you take it as eta specific by C, then it becomes reduced viscosity, because as the concentration is increased, the viscosity will be decreasing. So, reduced viscosity will be less as compared to that of the specific viscosity. So, these are of each one has its own application and usage depending on the need. Now, this is one of the equation plot you can determine, that is calculating the different reduced viscosities at each concentration. Then you plot eta reduced versus, that is on y axis, versus the concentration of your solution on the x axis. So, when you plot this, you get a straight line, and the slope at the intercept actually gives you, it actually follows mx plus c equation, y equal to mx plus c, with the intercept, that is c, giving you the viscosity, whereas the slope will give you the eta equal to the eta square and into k, that is a constant. So, eta reduced equal to k into eta square into concentration plus eta, because you have calculated, you have plot the reduced eta reduced versus the concentration as a plot. So, the plot of reduced viscosity versus concentration shows intercept y, that is eta or the intrinsic viscosity, then the slope is equal to that of k dash into eta square. So, this is a continuation of the previous one, when m can also be the same thing, can be converted into kind of molecular weight, where intrinsic viscosity, using the intrinsic viscosity we calculate the molecular weight using the equation Marx Hoven equation, eta equal to k dash into m to the power a, that is m is the molecular weight, and m is also called the viscosity of the average molecular weight, because this is one thing important, weight average molecular weight and number average molecular weight, two terms will come across, and this is the average molecular weight, which because each the molecular weight what we are determining is a average of the total number of that is determined that are present in the, assuming that each one has the same one, but nevertheless there may be some changes, therefore you can have a average molecular weight m, and k and a are the Mark-Hoven's constants. So, the molecular weight obtained by measuring the viscosity is a close to a number average or a weight average molecular weight. That is what I just explained to you above. Now, you can do one thing, it is a very simple one, by measuring the molecular weight, you know the molecular weight, and plot the number of molecules versus, you see a hyperbolic curve. Now, this is a weight average molecular weight, viscosity of the average molecular weight, number average molecular weight. So, all of them slightly differ as number of the molecules are different as compared to that of the molecular weight. So, on a plot like this, one has to be careful, because molecular weight often increases from right to left and not from left to right. So, that is one thing, the point I want to make here is to show that it actually not from the left to right, but from right to left. Now, here comes the biopolymer solutions. Now, here the biopolymer solutions have you know, in the previous papers you must have studied that in a protein, the protein is actually takes a compact spherical structure, globular structure, or it can have a rigid or rod structure, or it can have a random coil. So, it goes in, it can be into any shape, any condition, conformation, depending on the environment and depending on the molecules you add to the solution. Therefore, a dissolved macromolecule will increase the viscosity of the solution, because it disrupts the streamline of the flow, as shown in this, that if you consider all these areas as lines as one layer, and if you put a molecular biopolymer, that is a blue, actually disrupts the flow, and therefore viscosity will be different, in a different way of expressing or making you appreciate that how the viscosity works. So, the intrinsic viscosity of the biomolecule depends on various factors: shape, flexibility also, and the size obviously. So, the degree of water binding and non-spherical, these things all can determine the, or rather decide the viscosity, the quantitative value of the viscosity. Now, these are one of the tables shows you, the next slide shows you the viscosity of different polysaccharides. Like for example, you see the glucose, it is a very small molecule, it has no much of viscosity, it is just given for comparison. Whereas, you take the myoglobin 17,000 kD molecular weight, it has viscosity decreased enormously, and vovalbumin, which is 45 kD, also has a globular protein, and so on so forth. So, all of them will tell you the globular proteins actually have a different similar type 1, whereas when you take the fibrinogen, myosin, all these proteins are fibrous proteins, they have a very different rod like structures. So, the shape is important more, and in such cases more than the molecular weight. The viscosity is almost like 700 in case of the alginate, myosin is 217, which is very high as compared to any of the globular proteins. So, now let us take the example of the DNA denaturation. Now, the double helical structure has two strands and it forms a native structure as a double helical structure. But once you put any acid or it subjected to a heat or add a denaturant like urea or a non hydrophobic solvents like acetone or a more non-polar solvents like alcohol, what happens is that the DNA double helix breaks into two single strands, as I shown you in the picture right hand side. It separates into two different strands, two single strands. These are called the denatured. Now, once they are denatured, they are random, they are not in a proper shape, they are randomly coiled. Therefore, if you measure the optical density at 260 and also know that as the DNA denatured, the viscosity actually decreases. Now, why the viscosity of DNA decreases during denaturation? Why what I told you is this, it decreases, but what happens? The hydrodynamic behavior of this molecule resembles a long rod, which is because highly asymmetric and it has a high intrinsic viscosity. Therefore, at DNA denatures, the two strands separate, each one is free to adopt different conformation, and therefore, like for example, in a random coil, and this forms this coiled or rather denatured DNA single strand have lower intrinsic viscosity than that of the double stranded DNA. Therefore, you can study as a function of pH or ionic strength behavior on the single stranded DNA, that and then you can determine the intrinsic viscosity. Then you will realize that the intrinsic viscosity is influenced more by the ionic strength than pH, because ionic strength actually has more effect on denaturation as a slight than compared to that of small changes in pH. Therefore, the progressive denaturation of DNA, by example by adding DMSO, that is a dimethyl sulfoxide, has been shown that viscosity using the viscosity measurements. Therefore, it is possible that viscosity is more sensitive means for observing the denature of DNA than any other spectroscopic method like UV absorption. Although UV absorption is much more popular, but viscosity is a simple technique which can be done in even a college laboratories, is a very useful and simple technique, and of course, it is more sensitive. The viscosity behavior of DNA in 40% DMSO is very sensitive to ionic strength before and after denaturation. Now, here single stranded DNA produced to exposure to the DMSO is similar to that produced by the exposure to alkali as revealed by the viscosity measurements. Therefore, you can take a DMSO phosphate system and use to study the single stranded and double stranded DNA breaks in solution. You can determine, you can even use sonication to break and things like that. So, number of experiments can be studied in number of under different experimental conditions, either ionic strength, pH or DMSO or even a denaturant can be used. Under all these conditions, the intrinsic viscosity of DNA is reduced by slight contamination of the protein contamination, and intrinsic viscosity of DNA are strongly dependent on the source. Therefore, you can compare it with different methods. So, the next slide shows that demonstration of the hydrogen bonding in DNA. Like here again, because the break bond, the two strands break because the hydrogen bonds are no longer there between GC and then the AT, adenine thymine. Therefore, here what we are showing in this, it is a very old experiment, simple experiment, nevertheless very elegant experiment, that if you work as a function of pH, if you do the DNA and determine its relative viscosity, you see that in the range between 6 to about 8 or 9, it is actually not much of change, because that is why we are saying that the pH in this change range, pH change in this range, the viscosity does not change much, whereas on the acidic and on the left hand side, on the right hand side, the pH actually the intrinsic viscosity actually changes drastically, because hydrogen bonds are broken, and therefore the effect on the viscosity is much more visible. Protein expression also we have shown here, that how does a protein experiment can be done. Similarly, protein here I am showing you as an example of temperature. We discussed concentration, not concentration, pH and ionic strength in case of the DNA. Here I am showing you that temperature also can be studied. In this example, for protein we are showing you the temperature. That the temperature, as you increase the temperature, the protein ribonuclease, which is a classical example, can changes in the whole thing is like a S-shaped curve, and where the center of the change, the midpoint of the transition will give you the protein melting point, that is a Tm. Now, you will do this in much more detail in other techniques also, spectroscopic techniques, and you must have heard studied something in paper 4 also on biomolecules. Therefore, the intrinsic viscosity is ideal test method for monitoring the conformational changes, for monitoring the stability also for both proteins as well as DNA. And on the right hand side, another protein we are showing an example, that is chitosan, which is actually used in the drug delivery methods. Again, if you take with the time expression of time at different temperatures, and also you see that it is change in the viscosity can tell you a lot of information on the stability and conformational changes. So, to summarize what we have learned so far, viscosity is a measure of the liquid resistance to flow, which arises due to the friction between the internal layers of the fluid and as they move together past each other. And when there is a strong intermolecular forces of attraction between molecules in liquid, there is a larger resistance in the movement of the layers that pass one another, that leads to increased viscosity. Now, I explained to you the temperature dependence and how it influences the viscosity. I also introduced you to the terms like reduced viscosity, intrinsic viscosity, specific viscosity. Then you can determine the viscosity of the fluid by determining two different time periods, eta 1 equal to eta 2 into rho 1 by rho 2 into T1 by T2, and rho 1 rho 2 practical purposes we take it into same, because of the solution is dilute. In case of the biomedical engineering, biomedical research, the intrinsic viscosity of the polymer, that is the biopolymer, has been of great interest, and estimates the number of subunits also can be determined, and protein, whether it is in a fibrous condition, or also study the quaternary structure of the protein, can also give you more information by studying the viscosity or the intrinsic viscosity. You can determine the molecular weight also. For example, in DNA I have shown you about the temperature, pH changes, how the DNA denaturation occurs, and therefore you can study. You can even study the different conformations like DNA double helix. I only showed you the data on DNA double helix, but one can also study triplex, quadruplex, etc. And the stability and viscosity of the protein solution therefore is of great relevance in pharmaceutical industry, and unstable proteins unfold and aggregate, and therefore they cause an increase in the viscosity of the protein. So, by doing a viscosity experiment, simple experiment, you can have many applications both in research and in industry. Thank you.